3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Damn it, I keep forgetting to take that beach picture out for Memorial Day weekend when we went with our wives.
I know, and I didn't put on enough suntan lotion because I'm so much taller to the sun.
I know. Well, you are taller than me, actually.
This is true.
So, and a few inches. Okay, you're younger than me by like less than 30 days.
You know, it's all there. It's all there.
Actually, it is more than 30 days, isn't it? Shit.
Yeah.
Well, it's like 40 days.
It doesn't matter. Younger is younger.
Whatever. It doesn't matter. It's the Monday edition of the Dennis and Andy Show. We are going through torrential rain. So if for some odd reason the video gets funky and stuff, well, you know, now I have my excuse and I know why. Or you guys know why. So that is that. Oh, Michael's already kidding on me. Everybody's calling me. I'm 5'10". It's not like I'm a midget by any sense of the word. Good Lord. Just because you're a lanky fellow there, Michael. Anyhow, our guest tonight is Ron Garney. If you don't know who Ron is, then, you know, I just don't know what to tell you. Been in the business. We'll find out the exact number. I've been doing it for 30 years. I'm thinking Ron's at least 34 years in. Big run, of course, Captain America, X-Men, and Justice League at DC, and now BRZRKR. Oh, Michael, look at that. Throwing shade. I have kids calling you. You know what? I could block you right the hell out of here, buddy.
Don't worry, Michael. I'll bring you back in.
Ron will be nice to me, unlike
Ron is here. He is in the house. Let us bring him in.
There he is.
Hey, gentlemen.
Hey, Ron.
Ron, you'll be nice to me.
Yeah, you don't seem short to me.
I'm 5'10". I'm not short. I'm actually, you know, I don't like to get technical, but I'm going to because Dennis keeps rubbing it in. I'm 5'10"3/4. I'll have you know.
The 3/4 makes all the difference in the world.
Well, to my brother who would always be like,
if you look at the encyclopedia of definition of short, it comes right to that measurement. And then right to 3/4, the 3/4 is what puts you over the edge.
Exactly.
Nice.
Hey, you go up to a midget. You go up to a midget.
You're a giant.
And you go, no, not me. I'm just saying, if you walked up to a midget who was literally at the cutoff to where it's like you were technically a midget and said, would you like that extra 3/4? They'd be like, hell yeah, I would, because then I wouldn't be a midget.
I don't think
so.
I think when you ask most guys that, they would be thinking you're talking about something else.
I gave up on that long time ago.
That quickly.
Well, I mean,
hey, I've been married for 26 years.
Has it been that long?
For a long time. So,
well, maybe ask her then.
I got the kind that doesn't know how to read a ruler.
Yeah. Don't ask her. Andy already threw me under the bus with Helen. We were talking because his wife is moderately short, and he went home and said that I called her an Oompa Loompa.
Oh, is that right? That's not a nice thing to say.
Well,
yeah, especially when I walked in the house and she's like, "Whoa, why would you call me an Oompa Loompa?"
She's 5'2" in Italian. So
okay, well,
yeah. You know.
If you look at the Johnny Depp Willy Wonka, that's not a nice thing to call someone.
No,
right?
No, it's not. So how you doing, Ron?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm here, so I'm great.
So the question is, how far off was I? Have you been? Do you remember how many years have you been in? And I said 34. So I know it's longer than me.
Well, technically, if I want to get technical, I started out as a apprentice to this guy Sal Trapani, who
Oh,
I
no
was
way.
doing. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he was
Yeah.
he was a comic artist, and he did some DC work and things. But I was kind of doing some background stuff for him and layout stuff, and he was teaching me a little bit here and there. But he was wanted to do this comic strip called Adam about a monkey in space or something, and he was having me draw some of that for him, and so and during that time I was trying to, I think I had submitted samples to Marvel, and I was always working on that stuff to try to get in until I finally did. So that was about 35 years ago, and then I got in 1989. So.
All right. Well, that's cool. I just picked up, speaking of Sal, it's so funny. I literally just picked up a issue of Action Comics, obviously starring Superman from the 80s. And I got it because George Tuska drew it. And I love George Tuska's work.
Oh, okay.
And besides the Superman daily strip he did for a while, he didn't really do much Superman stuff.
No.
So I picked it up because he drew it. Sal inked it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No kidding. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he used to live around here in Connecticut. He passed away some years back.
Sure.
He was friends with my best friend's wife's father. And that's how I met him. And, and that was it, So I didn't last a long time. But, for the time I did, I learned a lot, He was a really good draftsman and understood composition really well. So
I'm trying to remember, did he ever, I thought he was a staff guy at DC for some time. Was he?
He might
no?
have been. Honestly, I don't, I was so long ago, I don't even remember what his resume, so much of his resume. I mean, it's just so long ago. And I didn't stay in touch with him over the years, and kind of came and went, but he might have been. I don't know. So,
oh, that's cool.
Ron at New York City, 2014. All right, Joe Sweeney.
He lives here
Sweeney's in the house.
He's a good cat. So
Ron, I always like to ask a question. A lot of the guys may know, but some of our viewers, either live or later on, will go back and watch. Love always to ask, what is your origin story? Everybody's got an origin story, and it's always fun to hear how you got into.
Well, I was inside my father. Certain area of him, and
we're getting the birds and the bees.
So we probably need to fast forward about 20.
Met my mother.
I met my mother.
I was just a really good swimmer at the time, so I just and I made, as we all did, we made our way through. We beat the odds, and that's my origin story. It was an explosion like the Big Bang, and.
But see, here's the funny thing. So my daughter graduated high school Saturday, right?
I hope she's not watching this.
No, she's not. And she's on a Star Wars kick, so she's just watching Star Wars on like a loop every movie.
Oh, really?
Okay. Oh yeah, she totally got my side.
That movie that infects everybody. I don't know what it is. My son was the same way. He was little, and I showed him Star Wars for the first time, and it just became like, there's something about that movie. It's like a religious experience for people.
Well, she went backwards.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Sorry. No.
Story.
All I was saying is, so we went to lunch afterwards, and I made a joke at lunch. She said something smart ass, and I said, I brought you into this world. I'll take you out of this world. The stuff that Dad always says.
Oh, you Bill Cosby'd her.
Well, my wife looks at me and goes, "You brought her into this world?" And like you, Ron, I looked at my wife and I go, "Oh, I'm sorry. Did you get pregnant without me?" I believe it all starts right here.
Immaculate conception. I know.
That's right. I said,
it's funny. It's funny. The attitude is like as if it's, like it doesn't take two to, but it does originate here.
That's right.
It's just the reality of it. It's not taking anything away from everybody. I think women are amazing creatures in that they can do what they do. That said, if you're talking technically, we're the farmers, basically, So
hey, I've shot out kidney stones. I know what pain feels like.
Well, you don't know what that pain. I mean, watching my wife with my youngest daughter, because she went in and couldn't get the epidural, because she was already at 10 centimeters by the time we got there. And so she had to go through it au naturel. And I've never heard anybody scream like that. The other, my other kids were easier, and my wife, and luckily for her, they came out quick. But and so did my youngest, but she didn't have any pain med for it. So she was screaming like, "I'm gonna die! Help me, please!" That's how bad it hurt. And I was, it's just, it's so shocking for us as the husbands and the fathers to watch somebody you care about going through that.
Yeah.
And the only thing you can do is just hang on to them, and try to get, be with them to get them through it. Funny though, I almost, when my son was born, I almost passed out because they were like, "Ron," my wife is pushing, and they're like, "Ron, come see your son being brought into the world," And I'm like, "No, that's okay. I'll hang out up here and just talk to my wife." And they're like, "No, you got it." And I'm like, "All right." So they talked me into it, and I went, and I looked, and all of a sudden the room just went, whoa, like that. And I was like, I grabbed it, and I heard the nurse go, "We're losing the father. We're losing the father."
No way.
At the table, and I said, "No, I'm okay. Keep going." But it was close because it was like watching like some combination of Invasion of the Body Snatchers meets Alien meets a pine cone being shoved out of another dimension. It was just bizarre, and it was just something but I cut the umbilical cords and on all my kids, and so I made it through. That's
see, I didn't get to cut the cord. My wife, she was going to go natural way. She had an epidural, but then our daughter's heartbeat wasn't staying above, let's say 40. Let's say it's supposed to stay above 45 for like 3 seconds.
Yeah. So
it would be like 47, 2 seconds, drop below 45. Then it would get back up above 2 seconds. So they finally said, "That's it. We're doing an emergency C-section."
Oh God.
So they wheel her in, and I'm up head and shoulders, and my wife could feel them because they shot her up in her belly to numb it, but it didn't really take effect. So she could feel it when they were pulling her open. I know. And then the doctor's like,
so women having to go through that, you gain a whole new respect for them. I mean, it's just, you look at them differently. I mean, you kind of look at them just, but they are different in that, and that's an amazing thing that their body does. So,
and they yell louder when in that time frame. Both my kids got stuck on the way out. Both of them.
They're like, "No,
and,
we don't want to come out."
They used the suction cup on the head. That didn't work. The salad spoons. And the first one, they were, how most of them have the stirrups. There were no stirrups. My sister-in-law and I had to be the stirrups. And then my wife yelled at me. We're leaning on there, and she goes, "You are the worst stirrup ever."
To add insult to injury, you got to have two people hanging off your legs, pulling them apart.
Yep, worst thing. And then my son came out, and he wasn't breathing, so I didn't get to cut the umbilical cord. It all worked out in the end, but wow.
Yeah, it's scary.
We could make a comic book out of this.
Yeah, I have a friend. Well, yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts. I mean, there are some stories that end up tragically in that regard. I have a friend, something that was bad, but
we're all lucky. So
it
all worked out
for sure. Whoa!
All right, let's get back to
deep. So
that was a nice tangent.
All that from an origin story.
All that from the origin story. Well, you wanted it. I went right back to the beginning.
You sure did.
That's right. Hey, Dennis, there's a reason Ron and I have gotten along for over 20 some years, because we have that sense of humor. So, but I can remember the first comic book I ever bought that, and that was the one that I was just like, ooh, this light went off, and I went from drawing cars, because I drew cars as a kid all the time, to going, screw cars, I want to draw comics. So do you remember the first comic book?
I remember some of the ones I had. I honestly don't know that I remember the very first one.
Well,
but I had
whatever comes to mind, I would say.
Yeah, well, I've talked about this before. I had the Fantastic Four that Jack Kirby drew with the Thing versus the Hulk.
Oh yeah.
On the GW.
Are you talking about the one where they were in the cave on the cover and the Hulk was on one side and Thing and FF were another coming down the hall, not knowing that the Hulk was on the other side? Or
I remember, and they made it into an oversized issue. But I just remember the Thing fighting the Hulk on the George Washington Bridge and him wrapping him with the big, steel cable and putting his foot against the Hulk, excuse me, the Hulk for leverage. And I remember even thinking then how big the Thing's foot was and how it looked so right to me, the way Kirby drew that foot bracing and pulling the Thing, pulling the cable, and he was straining, but the Hulk kept getting stronger, finally busted free. But that, for some reason, that scene sticks out in my head the most out of all the Marvel stuff I ever had back then. But I had other comics, more obscure ones like Magnus Robot Fighter, and that's in the early 70s. And I had we had Caspers, and they weren't necessarily superhero. There were those other kind of Gold Key comics.
Oh yeah.
Gold Key we had a lot of, and there were a lot more not hero related, but ghost stories and things like that. And then I remember getting an Iron Man. I think maybe Don Heck drew it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And then later, I remember my mother would, bring home a bunch of this stuff. I lived out in the country, so I didn't have access to comic stores or stores where I would get these things. So I was always just getting them, whatever my mother brought home that she would see in a store or something. So it was very sporadic. It wasn't like a regular thing. And I would read them and I would absorb them. And I remember getting some Draculas. And it was a kick because there was a Dracula I had gotten. It was Gene Colan, and that was the mid-70s somewhere. Mm-hmm. And maybe like 77 or something. And Gene Colan drew it, and I remember this one particular scene always stuck out in my head of Dracula in a gymnasium, and he's questioning this weightlifter about where this girl was or something. I don't remember the exact story. But the weightlifter's like, "Hey, man, I don't know what your deal is. Get out of here." It's this vampire standing in the middle of the gym, It's just hilarious. The whole prospect of that is just hilarious to me now. But he's standing there and he's like, won't answer Dracula's questions. And so the guy picks up a barbell. It's like got 200 pounds on it. He throws it at Dracula. And Dracula catches it with one hand and then throws it back at him and puts the guy through the wall with the barbell, And anyway, that always stuck out in my head. And I remember talking to Tom Palmer when I was working with him years later, and he sent me a bunch of Dracula stuff, and that was in there, that page. And I'm like, it was really weird to have read that as a kid, and then to be working with the guy all those years later, have made the connection, because I didn't know who Tom Palmer was when I was a kid, or Gene Colan, really. I was just looking at the art and reading that story, and I didn't pay attention to who the artists were. So it was a really weird, serendipitous moment when I got that thing from Tom. So I was very honored, to have worked with him. But yeah, those are the ones I remember. I remember Spidey Super Stories, and they were kind of in conjunction with something called the Electric Company. I would read those, whatever was available, all that stuff. So yeah, nothing specifically sticks out. I did, though, actually, there was a period too where this guy, we owned a service station, like back then in the 70s, in the middle of Cornwall, Connecticut. It was very rural. It was the only service station around. We sold used cars and pumped gas in there. Wow. Actually, we lived in the back of it, of the gas station, believe it or not. Yeah, I grew up in the back of a gas station. We didn't have much money, and I came from a very poor background. But anyway, one of the guys who worked in the garage, he came to work one day and he had a stack of creepies and eerie's and things like that and gave them to me. And I was like, so I really got into that. And I couldn't believe how good the art was and the Vampirellas and stuff by Gonzalez, I think his name was.
Yep. Yep.
And I was also really into Godzilla movies and the Monster Times. It's funny because I had a very eclectic tastes and things. I was into sports, I was into music, I was into all this stuff. I was really into Star Trek for a while. I went to this place called the Federation Trading Post in New York, which was the most unbelievable place, like a museum for Star Trek.
Now, Dennis is a huge Trekkie. So.
Yep.
Oh, are you?
Oh my God.
Really?
Everything
Yes.
Trek.
Oh, well, hold on one second.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
As soon as you mentioned the name of that place, you were probably like, I wish it was still there. I'd drive to New York tomorrow. There's a store called the Federate. What?
Well, and I thought Starbase Alpha was a great name, and I'm right
Yeah, you
there.
like these then. This is this one is a Brad Nelson phaser. Now this phaser was made back in the 70s, early 70s, like 73 or 74. And I got this from the Federation Trading Post. The guy had one there. It was like a museum. It's unbelievable. And it emits strobe and things like that. It's really, but Gene Roddenberry had him make these because they were going to do Star Trek Phase 2.
Right.
In the 70s. So these were going to be the phasers for them because Roddenberry liked the heft and the weight and the feel of it and the fact that they worked and emitted strobe. This one works, but I don't have the batteries in it. So he had to make about, I don't know how many, maybe like 30 or 40 of them, and I happened to get one. So, or maybe it was more than that, but he sold them through he finally sold them through an order form through Federation Trading Post in New York. So I got a hold of one of these. I've kept it ever since. I've had it.
I was going to say, so when did you say you went there? How long?
That was like 74.
Holy crap! That thing's that old. That is a great shape. That old.
And I had it refurbished.
Okay.
It was. I just recently had it refurbished. I mean, but it was still in pretty good shape. But I had it repainted and stuff, and and the electronics in it were so old that they just corrode or whatever if you from non-use, and pieces came apart over the. I mean, it's God. You got to think, what is it? 24 Ebor, 94. It's 40, 50 years old now.
Yeah.
Wherever it is. So, I mean, for 50 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Dude,
that is the state-of-the-art gun for that show.
Phase two was mid-70s because it was going to be the second launch of Star Trek. It wound up not being able to take off, and eventually that rolled into becoming Star Trek the Motion Picture.
The motion picture, right, especially after Star Wars. This one, you probably might even have this. This is the Wand phaser by the Wand Company.
Yep.
These are awesome.
They are.
Has all these different effects on it. It's so badass. I love it.
Now, does that top part come out?
It does, yeah. You just have to press this.
And the reason for it coming out is I'm not a big Trek guy. What's the point? So you can just handhold it.
It's just the smaller version of the phaser. It's the thing that powers the pistol.
So there's a phaser 1 and a phaser 2. The smaller one, you'll see in some of the episodes, they use them. It's less powerful. Basically, the pistol part magnifies it and makes it much more powerful, which is the phaser 2. And then there's the phaser rifles.
Yeah. He's got a phaser rifle. He's just been waiting to show me.
I don't, but for those Star Trek fans out there, since we are talking,
I've never seen a phaser rifle.
Star Trek Phase 2, that actually was what the Starship Enterprise was going to look like for the new TV show. This is the actual Phase 2 model of it.
They made into the series.
Yep,
awesome.
And then they
I have
changed
an
the warp
Enterprise
itself.
over there too, but I'm not going to go yanking that all out. Some of these guys have made some unbelievable models, But that was the thing that was so cool about the Federation Trading Post is they had like an 11-foot Klingon ship that they built in there. They had a life-size Nomad. Like it was so cool. I mean, right to exact specifications, and it lit up and you know, it was just like a kid's dream. You walk in there and they had big bins of tribbles and shirts and posters, and they had, you know, the whole Enterprise, you know, the bridge consoles in this one room, and it was really amazing. There's another guy out in Ticonderoga who just put together a whole museum set, like it's a Star Trek set recreation. It's supposed to be pretty cool. I'd love to go.
Oh yeah. Wait, what state is that?
New York.
That's okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. It's like near upstate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard
it's
about
near
that
Canada.
guy.
It's right, or Canada.
Yeah,
somewhere there. But
yeah, he's got like the whole bridge, I think.
yeah, you got the bridge. You got all the sets, and it's laid out exactly like it was on the, you know, the series set. And you can go in there, and you know, so it looked pretty cool. If you can see it on YouTube.
Yeah.
I forget the guy's name, but he's an Elvis impersonator or something. The guy who opened it up, but he's also done Star Trek videos where he plays Captain Kirk and stuff. But it's
Cawley, I think.
Stephen Cawley. Yeah, Cawley.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote to him and said, "Hey, I love that. I hope I can make it up there and meet you someday, because really did a great job on that place." You know.
Yeah.
So we'd love to get up there someday.
Yeah, they film a lot of the Trek fanfare stuff. Those videos that they do, they rent them out, and you can go on there and they shoot them on the set. It's just amazing.
Oh, is that right? Cool.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Cool.
I bought a couple of the Gold Key trade paperbacks that reprinted the, you know, Star Trek comics from back then, and I can't remember the artist's name.
Yeah,
I know it's an Italian guy.
Those too. Yeah. Right.
It's an Italian guy. That art is just, for the time period that it came out.
Well, back then, it's like that. You know, there's a real something to be said for the craft. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's they weren't distracted by the things a lot of artists are distracted. Well, maybe not a lot, but some artists had gotten distracted by over the years, more current times, about, you know.
Sure.
Putting a certain textures on everything.
Oh yeah.
Back then they were true, you know, true to the art form of the draftsmanship, and the, you know, that was what the primary thrust was for, you know, that craft and this craft. And yeah, you can see some amazing artists back then. So
yeah.
You know,
there's also a one of the 45 records with there's more than one with Star Trek, but I have one that it's such a great combo. John Buscema drew it, but Neil Studio inked it.
Oh yeah, wow!
And just that combo. I mean, we've seen Neil and John Buscema on like Conan and a few other things, but on Star Trek, just seeing John draw Star Trek with his layouts and stuff, camera angles, and then Neil ink it. When I found it, it was in the past decade, just at a convention, like, oh, because I like the record stuff. I like collecting that weird stuff. And I was just like, oh my God, this is John Buscema and Neil Adams.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Doing Star Trek.
Yeah, the way Neil inks too must have been really cool on him. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I'll get some scans of it.
I'm sure I could find it online and just Google it. So,
but
anyway.
it's definitely
Oh God. My least favorite stuff. God,
is it really? Well, I'm a huge X-Men fan.
When he introduced me, he's like, oh, and he did. What did you say I did?
Oh, I said Captain America.
Yeah, that's fine.
X-Men. I did say X-Men. I forgot Hulk. Because that's my second.
Silver Surfer, Daredevil, Spider-Man. There's
Spider-Man. Well, actually, it's funny. I was totally going to bring up Surfer because I remember when you were doing it, and you said, you know, it definitely has the Mobius vibe to it, you know.
Yeah, but my point was, you brought up JLA and X-Men. Those are my two least favorite.
Oh, are they really? Well, what else? I can't
there's one more.
DC.
Star was one of my least favorites too. But
right. Well, what else at DC? And no offense,
it was just JLA. That's all I did.
Justice League, right?
Just Justice League. I mean, it wasn't my least favorite. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it was, I can't stand doing team books, you know?
Oh yeah.
So
I hear that.
And JLA, they're both team books. And I just can't get into it because there's just, you know, I like taking a character and finding something about it that I can bring out, maybe that, that I see in the one character,
Right.
give it a look or give it a feel like I did with Cap or what have you. But when you do team books, it's always the same thing. It's like these, they're all fighting each other, and it's the same.
But what do you think about the Justice League? Because Dennis and I, when we first started the podcast a year ago, it was audio, not video. And on one of the audio ones, this goes way back, we did a review because I reread it and I was like, Dennis, you got to read this. Was the Pain of the Gods Justice League story, which I think you inked that one, didn't you?
Yeah. That was,
that kind of separated them out.
Yeah. Well, that's why, because that's what I told them. I told them I like doing singular. And when I first went over there, that's how that came about. Was when I first went over there, it was with the idea I was going to draw Superman. And I kind of got bait and switched by the editor. And he basically, oh, well, we want you to do JLA first. And, then you can move over to Superman. I'm like, I really didn't want to do it, I'm like, all right, but I'm being a good soldier. I'm like, okay, and then you get to draw all of the heroes, and I'm like, well, I really like just doing singular characters. And I actually contributed the idea of doing this alien story. It was more about, an alien presence that they all got whisked away separately to these, and then it turned into this emotional, the Flash segment was about him putting up fire alarms, and
I know.
And I'm like,
I will say that was, I think that might have been the one issue that we were like, like every story, it has its ups and downs. The Flash running around putting up fire alarms, I'd rather see Ron draw something else.
The idea of seeing the impact, and I remember.
Yeah, I thought the concept
with Chuck about it, like the idea of the impact on these heroes, and we never actually see the emotional. This was all coming from me. I said this to them. The emotional impact of people dying, and they're never going to save everyone. And how do they react when they aren't able to save people? And so that's sort of how that came about. And hi, honey, I'm on an interview right now. Thank you. Bye. So that's how that kind of came about. But I don't know. I felt like it could have been so much more to it, I guess. And it's nobody's fault. It's just the way it went. And I was, artistically speaking, experimenting a lot with inking. And so there was some a lot of hit or miss techniques I was trying in there. So it was very experimental for me at the time. And it was a lot of volume. I was penciling and inking, so I had to get it done. So I wasn't able to put in the time I wanted to put in at, making it the best it could be, because it was, a regular book, which is part of the downside of, doing regular books as opposed to just doing special issues, Yeah. So I was sort of caught between a rock and a hard place on that. So it wasn't my least favorite. It was just, I felt it could have been more, and also poor Chuck Austin was taking a beating in the press at the time, and anything that guy touched, everybody hated. He was, he was kind of like, I don't know how to put it, but it was almost irrational, the hatred.
Yeah, I don't know. I never really I remember that time period too, and I was just like, I don't know him. I've only talked to him on Facebook and Messenger every now and then. So I don't know him that well at all, but I remember that going like, what's the problem with this guy?
Well, it was also the beginning of the, the message board craze and the,
Yeah, that's true.
And so once people realized at that point, when the internet came and Twitter came and people had a voice all of a sudden, and they could read their own sentences, and all of a sudden the world is revolving around their opinions.
Right.
It's a real weird phenomenon that happened with that, is that all of it, the psychological, I'd love to see a psychological study on it done, because it seems to me like it just tapped into this weird need that people have to feel like they're in, there's a purpose in their lives, or that there's it's not a weird need. Everybody needs purpose, but I mean, it made them have a voice where they probably felt they didn't have a voice. It made them put them in a place where people would actually read what they had to say, you know?
Yeah. Well, and it also builds up, it definitely builds up a certain level of importance to them that they're not used to.
Sure.
You know?
We all feel that way. I remember the first time my G.I. Joe was printed. It was my first comic I ever did.
Well, that's what I was going to say is we know it because you know, we had stuff published.
Yes.
Right. And so we're like kind of used to it.
Yeah.
So then you see other people and you know, I think at some point there will be some type of study that'll definitely show, you know, how they'll take a group and just follow them for like 20 years. I wouldn't be surprised if something like that. Well,
the internet, you know, the internet won't be forever. Just like nothing is forever. There'll be a time in history where you'll look back and say, remember that time where electronically everybody was talking to each other, and you'll see the psychological effects of echo chambers and how people tend to group and herd, and you know, they become schools of fish, you know, and you see the internet really propelled that sort of phenomenon forward, jumped it forward, and magnified it to such a degree because it's right there on this screen, and you know, so you really saw, and I really believe it's contributed to the crazy polarization politically and everything else that we see, you know, and it really had a negative sort of, and there's been positive things. I mean, the access to information and ability to get things off the internet's been great, you know, but that part of it's been really, I think, a negative thing to our culture in America or in the world entirely. I mean, you know, for how it's affected people, you know, their mindsets. So hopefully that'll change. It'll cool out a little bit and people will, you know, I don't even go on Twitter anymore because of it. I'm on there, but I barely, because every time I click on it, it's just people saying the trashiest, most horrible things to each other, you know? And I just don't want that in my life. So I just don't bother with it, you know? Even if I stick to comics, sure enough, I'll find, you know, if I stick to a comic book theme on there where I just follow eventually I start seeing people arguing and they start accusing, you know, and this one's a member of this and this person's, you know, they are, I remember seeing something by myself, even like, stay woke, y'all. Ron Garney's a member of the, whatever it was. I can't remember what it was, but I'm like, you don't know anything about me, you jack off. And you're sitting there saying things that aren't even true, you know, and then the weaker people who are, you know, they will read that and they won't want to talk to you because they don't want to be seen talking to this person because they think they're a member of that, and that, you know, and it's so freaking immature and stupid that I just want no part of it anymore, because it's like, you know, grow up, everybody. All right. You know, the world does not revolve around your opinions. It doesn't. You know, it's not going to change because you went on Twitter and said something trashy about somebody else. I don't care who it is. And you're not out there fighting the good fight. You know, you should fight for things you want in life, but this is not the way to be doing it. You know what I mean? So it drives me nuts. So as you can see, I get, you know, because
social media is a bane. I'm telling you.
It sure is. I mean, it is. Hey, I'll be the first to say I love Instagram, you know, because I can pare all that away easy. And we have an ability to do things with our work that we didn't enjoy before because we get feedback. You know, before we were cooped up in these studios,
right?
You know, and it's like you're working, you just turn the pages in, all you're doing is waiting. The only person you'd hear from is the editor. You know, and they would be, and sometimes they wouldn't even get back to you. You know, be like, oh yeah, the pages look great. When are the next 4 coming in? And that's all the feedback you'd get. You know, unless you went to conventions and showed your stuff at conventions. And then this is where I really learned to appreciate the fans, because the fans were amazing. Because you would go to the cons, sit there, and they would come up, and they were 99.9% of the time the most beautiful people who would come up, say the nicest things, talk about your work, because they just loved it. You know, you just love the medium, and they wanted to talk to you. And I would bet even the people who might say bad things about my work or whatever online, which they're entitled to, they would still come up and be polite to my face, because people are always more polite to your face than
Oh, of course.
behind the screen. But at least they, they care. I don't care if they don't like it. Everybody's entitled to not like or not like what they want. But it shows they care no matter what, positive or negative. Sometimes the negative gets out of control. But the fans were really hooked me into wanting to go to cons for that reason. But before that, but now with Instagram, you get that right away. The same way, almost I would say, the way music, like you would play music in front of a crowd, get a reaction from people, they would applaud. Well, putting your work on Instagram is like having that audience that you are performing for. So, so it's like, it's given comic art, at least, or art in general, an ability to have an audience the way music had a live audience, So I enjoy Instagram for that reason. I don't post as much as a lot of other people, but, because there's always a point where I'll post something for a few days and then I start to feel very vain, because I'm like, and I get sick of myself, and I'm like, I don't want to, I want all this attention, feed me, it's not what it's about. I truly enjoy the fans and I enjoy getting the feedback and stuff. And I post things that they might be excited to see for the next upcoming issue, but I don't get on there, and I probably should post more things of my process and things like that. But honestly, with 4 children and everything, I barely have enough time to just post.
I forget, to be honest, because like I was posting on Instagram. Well, one tip that I can give you, if you haven't heard of it, to help, there's a website called buffer.com, and you can the point of it is to link like multiple accounts to it. So you only have to write one post and then you schedule it and it'll just go to, so like for me, I had it set up for my Facebook business page, my Twitter and Instagram. I'd write one post. I could schedule it out 10 days if I wanted to, and just press a button and it would just go when I say it goes.
Go to all the social media posts?
Go to all the accounts.
Well, Facebook and Instagram do that. Like if you can attach it to all of them, so most of the time I do that, but I cut Twitter off because it just
I mean, I get on it every now and then, because I have found that for doing my own Indiegogo campaigns and stuff, out of the 3, Twitter's the best one.
What?
For doing, like, I'm doing my own creator-owned Indiegogo campaign and stuff.
To market it, you mean?
Yeah, so Twitter's the best one for marketing.
Well, good, man. I think I get it. I'm not. Not saying Twitter's not for.
Oh no, I think you just look at him as a tool, and if you look at him as a tool, and you pick the right tool for the job.
For sure. That's why I like Instagram. They say, Joe, Sweeney, we're not ignoring you. I appreciate it.
We'll get to.
They definitely do.
Well, what I was going to say was Joe brought up a point that I was going to say is one of the reasons we like cons so much is because you get that interaction directly with the artists and vice versa. Right. And it is so much more cordial in person, regardless if you think the person's phenomenal or just okay, or they draw a character you like, it doesn't matter. You have the opportunity to discuss what you like or don't like or what you would like to see. And it's just so much better in person than on, any of the social media. So I kind of agree with Joe. That's why we're going to our convention this weekend. We get to see people, have fun, pick up some books, talk to some artists and stuff. We love the interpersonal reaction.
And that's what it's supposed to be about anyway. I mean, it's clearly we're providing, we're sort of responsible for their escape, and you have to do it well for them to be able to escape through it. And so I think they show their appreciation, I mean, I remember reading Walt Simonson's stuff back in the 80s when he was drawing Thor and writing it, and that stuff, to this day, it was the most escape for me that I could ever expected in a comic book. I'm a big fan of Norse mythology in general anyway, and that's what this comics really are. But Walt tapped into something there that was so visceral and real. I remember Thor and Beta Ray Bill standing in front of Odin, and he shot the camera from the back of them, and you saw their, he had their calves look like they were this big,
yeah.
ready to go to battle, and Odin's telling them, this is for whoever wins. This wins the Mjolnir, the power of Mjolnir.
Yep.
And I would get chills reading that stuff. I'm like, this is the best shit I've ever read. I just loved it so much. And then the way he drew it, and it was very kinetic and loose, but artistic, and just you really got absorbed. His art style and his writing style really pulled you in to where the world faded away. And I was in it, and I was like a camera. I was like a flying camera in that flying little, movie camera hit that world, like just following Thor around. And it was the most amazing experience. This day I gush when I see Walt, and he knows it. I've told him a million times. But when he walks up, I'm just so like, he's the only guy I gush over in the entire industry. I'm not a gusher person, but with him, for some reason, because of that, I loved it so much.
Well, Walt, if you're gonna put the word iconic in front of somebody, Walt's definitely one of those guys.
Yeah.
And the Thor stuff, because I bought it when it came out as a kid. I couldn't wait for it to come out every month. There was no previews. You didn't know what was going to happen. It said to be continued. There was no internet to get on to see preview pages. You were just waiting those 30 days for it to come out.
And what
pull you in.
What great story, unique story. Who would have thought of Beta Ray Bill?
Yeah.
This alien with a horse's face that, just happened to have was just as worthy as Thor and was as mighty as Thor, and they had to fight over this thing. And then they, Odin made him that other hammer, it's just amazing, like so unique. And that's the thing that, it was just such a great story. I'm surprised they never used it like in any of the movies or anything, but
we're hoping.
You never know.
It's too be coming.
They go with more. I've noticed the movies tend to tailor themselves to the more current administration over the last 15 years have been at Marvel, I think. Those storylines and things. And I guess they I don't know. I guess they tap into some of the old stuff too.
When they did the first movies for obviously each character, introduce them like, Captain America, First Avenger.
Yeah, they do. I don't know why I'm saying that. That's probably not a fair thing to say.
They pull bits and pieces. Even Thor Ragnarok,
they do
bits and pieces.
I know.
They do.
When us big fans, we just want to see him work. We want to see our favorite Corbinite swinging Stormbreaker.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Yeah.
What was that question Joe had? Oh, here it is. Let's ask. Hold on. We'll get the
That was my favorite character to draw.
There you go.
I would say my favorite project I've worked on, most likely, I think for artistic reasons, was Daredevil. I just loved drawing Daredevil, and I was really trying a style. I was very had a vision for that book, kind of the same way I did with Cap in the beginning. Captain America's one too, but Daredevil artistically, I just had a vision for it right away. And and that's when I get that opportunity, I go with it. There's a little bit of a tug of war with Marvel, a couple of people at Marvel over what I wanted to do with it, but ultimately they let me do it. And I wanted to try a color scheme with the book and an black and white inking scheme with it, because I wanted every page to feel like it was Matt Murdock's eyes we were seeing the page through, almost like it was a radar sense,
right?
Sort of thing, And I think it worked great in some of it, And I worked with Matt Miller, who was great, and very closely with him. Explained to him that I wanted a lot of black and white, but then splashes of color, and I would send him samples of things, and pull back and create more of a grainy texture. And so he used the dots in some of the color very effectively. And so, for me, it was a fun journey artistically. And so that's probably my favorite.
Was that the first project that you took that real stark approach with the blacks and stuff?
No, no.
No, wait, Conan was before that, wasn't it?
Conan was before. No,
No, Conan was after.
Came after Daredevil, but I did Men of Wrath before Daredevil.
That's right.
And I was experimenting with that there, but I had experimented with that style way back at the beginning of my career in spots, like on Ghost Rider. I was playing around quite a bit. Sin City, obviously, Sin City had come out, obviously, and everybody was influenced by that. And I had mentioned in another interview that, Frank Miller is so ingrained in the comic consciousness at this point that you're going to get compared to him anytime you try that. But and it's a flattering comparison. I mean, obviously, I'm doing that style and I like it. I love doing it. However, he's not the only one who's ever done that. And I've been influenced by plenty of guys in the past who've done things like that led to that. Alec Raymond, and even if you look at Hal Foster's early Prince Valiant stuff in the backgrounds of the mountains, he breaks open the lines and lets the form speak for itself. So you can see how things evolved to that, what's called the Frank Miller style. And Frank was heavily influenced by this guy. I can't remember his name, from Europe. Off the top of my head, it's escaping me, but it's like you can clearly see how much Frank was influenced by this guy. And then Will Eisner did a lot of it. And then there's Sergio Topi. I don't know if you guys know.
Topi's. Yeah.
I mean, he was breaking all kinds of boundaries with his negative space and things like that. So I'm influenced by all that stuff. Yeah. So, but I've been playing around with it for years, and now that I'm inking my own work, I'm kind of, because I'm doing BRZRKR and Men of Wrath and Daredevil, they're all more darker centric things.
Well, I was going to say too, I think the biggest thing, and you just obviously touched on it, is you're inking your own work. So like when you said you were experimenting kind of with it back earlier on Ghost Rider and stuff, I don't think I'd have to go back and look at that stuff. Yeah. But I think because you weren't inking it, it wasn't as prevalent.
No, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
And you were still young in your career too.
And I was
things together, but now you're here and it's really gelled. Yeah. And because I've got the Men of Wrath, and I totally forgot about that. I'm glad you brought that up. I thought that was a great story, and the style, that approach, fit it so well. And same with Daredevil. So.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it really I'm just doing what comes natural. Hey, Mike Paterzo, how are you? Thank you very much.
He's a Giants fan. Screw him. Sorry, he busts my balls all the time about the Cowboys.
What's wrong with being a Giants fan?
Nothing.
Many.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, speaking of which,
Andy has a dirty little secret. He might like a shitty Texas football team. Thank you for your time. And he just leaves.
Yeah,
that's funny.
What was his question? He had a question about X-Force.
Well, he wanted to know how you approached X-Force, especially.
Oh, well, that was, that book, I'm trying to remember how that came about. They just asked me to do it. And, it was one of those things where everything had to be done yesterday, and it was so, I was just penciling it. And then Danny Mickey was scanning blue lines of it and inking off the blue lines. And or not Danny Mickey.
Was it Mark Morales?
Scott
Hanna?
Hannah, thank you. Sorry, Scott. Just blank for whatever reason. And he did a great job. Danny Mickey. Sure. Did Danny Mickey work on me on X-Force? What did he work on me over? Yeah. Wait.
I don't remember. I mean, I know he's worked with you. I guess
it was both, and both those guys worked on it, or something. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. But they both did a great job. It was just very fast. I mean, Scott had some really nice texture work going in there, and Danny really had a lively sort of look to it. So I liked it. I didn't really have much of an approach. I was just penciling my butt off because it was, I had to keep moving. So I didn't really have much of an approach, just what came out of me naturally. And that's really how I approach almost everything. I just do what comes naturally, what I feel instinctively in the work. So
are you, I always love asking other pencilers this. Are you a straight to the board guy, or do you light box from layouts?
No,
I mean, I'm sure at some point in your career you've done
look,
back and forth, but
you can see that the size of my light table here. It's just
nice,
gigantic, you know. And I don't use it all that much anymore, you know. I don't need to as much. As you evolve and get better and better, you tend to get more confident, and you're able to do things easier. And you know what I would do a lot, I would flip things over, you know, so I could see them from the back, you know. And I learned that from my art teacher way back in grammar school. He would draw and he'd say, flip it over, and then you'd be able to see the mistakes right away. Yeah. And so I trained myself to do that all the time, and it helped me get better and start to spot it without having to turn it over. Like I would draw it, and then I was able, my brain was, because it forces you to use the other half of your brain too. Sure. And so I was able to start spotting the mistakes, you know, right away. Like, well, not right away. I'd have to walk away and then come back, and then they would jump out at me. Yeah. So I use it, but not as often as I used to. And plus, I started doing some stuff digitally because it helps me with speed. It's tailor made for what we do. I mean, it's all the same. You know, I was telling in another interview recently, you know, they were asking me about that, and sometimes people ask you, and it's almost like they're trying to catch you. Do you do digital? Like,
they don't know.
Yes. So what?
They assume it's a program that you're just like pushing a button, just like the old colors.
Yeah,
it's computer coloring.
It's like, you know, they act like it's, you know. I mean, this girl who was asking me wasn't rude, but she was very nice. I mean, she asked me, you know. But I've been asked before where people are sniffing around about it, see what you're doing, and if it's digital or not, as if somehow you're cheating on something. I'm like, I do exactly the same thing on my board as I do on paper. It's just a mechanical piece of paper. There's no difference. Here's the difference for me is I don't use any kind of SketchUp or any kind of figure program or anything of the kind. I just draw just like it's a piece of paper. The difference, the reason I use it is I can just step backwards when I make a mistake and go and redo it. I don't have to sit there and go like this.
Yeah, exactly.
And then throw that piece of paper away if it doesn't work. You know, it has saved me so much time and aggravation of having to erase. And plus I destroyed my shoulder. I have a titanium shoulder, and part of that was 30 years of erasing hard.
Holy crap.
Constant wear and tear on my shoulder. I tend to, you know, I would go overboard in drawing on bond paper and flipping it around and going on, you know, using the light board and erasing. Yep. If you saw the hundreds of FedEx boxes stacked with stacks of bond paper I've used, it's insane. You know, my art dealers were, you know, my art dealers like, what are you doing? Like, we could sell all that. And I'm like, go ahead. I don't think anybody's going to want it, but I have so much tons of that stuff. I mean, I'm looking right now. I've got boxes and boxes of it. Let's see.
Yeah.
Actually, look, here, I'll show you. I mean, you can see just pages upon pages of just drawing, you know, like doing all the roughs, you know, rough.
I hear you.
This is X-Force. Or no, this is X-Men with Colossus. These are all just preliminary sketches and things for layouts that I would do. Because I used to do it like Buscema would do it. I would just draw it full size on bond paper and then light box it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You know, and it was very effective because you didn't have to erase as much. It's basically like you're erasing by penciling over it without having to erase. So it saved me some aggravation. And, you know, a lot of people were like, why are you drawing it twice? I'm like, I'm not. I'm just saving myself having to erase it by just using the light box, which cuts out all the stray lines anyway, just by drawing it tight over that, you know?
Yeah.
So...
Well, that's what I like about doing digital, because I do the hybrid thing. I draw it all digitally in Sketchbook Pro.
Yeah, I do
that program the best. And then I print it out in blue and ink it.
Yeah,
with pens.
That's a great way to do it.
And then I scan it back in and do some whiteout crap that I can't do.
Right.
Traditional.
Yeah. I mean, you know, what I've done in the past is I do what you've done. but I'll draw it all on there, and then I take it and then I print it off, and then I light box it like I do here. I just use what I did, but it's all there, and then I put it onto the regular board. But it's no different than using a Sharpie and a flare and drawing a layout here. That's what people don't get. It's the exact same principle, except I'm just being able to step backwards, use a free transform instead of redrawing ahead. I can just take a transform tool and make it smaller where it needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the best part.
Or, I don't have to erase it. I can
not only that, but just like you said, let's say this is what I do more than anything else. I'll draw a pose and be like, I wonder how that arm would look like this. And I can just add a new layer without erasing the arm, draw the new arm and go, yeah, no, that blows. I still like the original. And I never erased the original.
Exactly. Yeah. So it saves you. It's tailor-made for us. I mean, even the line tool, you can just make a straight line easy. And I, honestly, I still use, if I do it, I still use these. I still can make, it's no different than I would do on a regular piece of paper.
Yeah, when I went down and worked for this dude in Florida like 10, 12 years ago at his studio. He has a storyboard advertising place. And he had me come down for a week to do some stuff. And at the time, I didn't have the big Cintiq. I just had the smaller one. But he had the real big one, like a desk, And he was doing that. He was throwing down his French curve and just whipping it around, using all the same tools. It's just
I do the same thing. It's just this pen. This pen is just like a ink pen.
Yeah, exactly.
All it is. It's just electronic.
Yeah.
I've seen guys who use programs and things, and that's beautiful, but you can tell. I mean, there was a period there where I was like, I was feeling like a real dinosaur because I'm looking at what some of these guys were doing, and I'm like, man, how are they being able to draw so well? I was like, the buildings, and the only guy I ever saw buildings so technically perfect was Jerry Ordway. I mean, there are a lot of guys, but Jerry Ordway, in particular, his Superman run. His backgrounds were like nobody's I've ever seen. I mean, they were just amazing technically. And the way he would put in the details, that the little corbels on the corners, and the and the keystones above the windows, and he would do it so perfectly. And that was all legit hand drawn stuff. Yeah. So I'm
sure you've seen his roughs that he traced off from.
Yeah, and
those things were really tight.
But if you know Jerry's got that personality. He's a very patient guy. Hey, Ron, how are you?
Yeah.
Very quiet.
Oh yeah.
Guy, hey, how are you? Great guy, nice guy.
Yep.
Jerry, you're a beautiful man. But I'm not that way. I don't have the patience, so I can do it. But I like the emotional energy I try to put in stuff,
Sure.
That's just personalities, where I came from versus where he came from, and it comes through the work. So I was never able to.
I was just saying, that's one thing you're doing now in your work and you've always done it, but as we said, as you get older and more confident, I really I like all types of stuff. So I like what Jerry does, and I like, Travis Charest, what he does.
Yeah,
but I really like, and this goes back to my love of Joe Kubert. I love suggestive stuff.
Yeah.
I love suggestive stuff.
Yeah, Joe Kubert.
I like being able to I like to look at a panel, and this is how I would explain Kubert's art to people who didn't know it, is the way he could focus where to look in the panel, and you'd look at it, and you'd see a figure of like Sergeant Rock, and he'd be rendered up. And then there'd be a tank in the midground that would have less rendering. And then there'd be, say, another tank in the background that would have even less rendering.
Right, with just a few lines. I know.
And it was like, and I always described it to people like, I'm looking at you right now, and you're in perfect focus, but your banners behind you, your window, your desk are out of focus. So how do you do that in comics? Less detail.
Yeah,
Joe's
there's a lot of other tricks too. I mean,
there's other tricks, but you know what I mean.
You go, the straighter the lines, the more they come forward. I mean, the more you can just use a natural line.
Mhm.
Because nothing's perfect, even a building,
Right.
you know. So I like the looseness of freehanding buildings. Like, you know, this guy Guarnido who did Black Sod,
Oh yeah, he's phenomenal.
he's ridiculous. I mean, if you
Yeah.
look at his brownstones and the way he just brushes it all in, and it's just
Well, you know-
gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous work. And
Even his cars.
yeah, everything he does.
That Cadillac.
He's another one of those guys that you just look at it and you're like, this guy, and him and Enrico Marini, and he's amazing. I'm friends with him. Nice. I was a fan of his for so long, and he did this book called
Raptors.
Gypsy and Raptors, and you know, and he
I know Enrico. Yeah.
Yeah, he's amazing. Just a natural artist, and he would do these things that, you know, and I remember, you know, just looking at some of his faces and go, man, Cap would look good with those faces, you know, faces. So I kind of, before my second run of Cap, I was kind of playing around with his look, you know, but then for me, it wasn't where I needed to evolve to, but I was playing with it a little bit, you know, because I thought his jaw, the way he would draw jaws and stuff was really cool.
But that's what's cool, because you picked up little things, because I've got all the Raptor stuff he did, because one, I thought it was a great story, but also just the art and the fact that he did the coloring as well, you know, the painting, I should say as well. Did you pick up the 2 Batmans he did a few years back?
Yeah. It's amazing. I love his backgrounds and his buildings, and he's got a great eye for composition, and that's what was great about Joe Kubert. Back to Kubert for a second, was he really knew how to compose a panel in such a way where he did so much with, you know, there was so much information with very little effort. Like, you know, the way he would inset panels with a frame inside a panel, like in Tarzan, and the point of focus, like you're saying, and then his compositions with, like in Tarzan, with vines and, you know, and things like that, just so beautiful, you know, and the way he could make the figure work was, I don't know, it was nothing like it. So, yeah.
And he could just, especially in Tarzan, it was easy for him to lead you compositionally around the page with the trees and the vines. But then when you see him do it in Sergeant Rock, and then one of my favorite books he did, and I heard he did it over the weekend as a favor to Julie Schwartz, was that DC Comics Presents with Superman and the Demon. And that's the tale I heard, is that it was a favor to Julie Schwartz, because it's just, you know, DC Comics Presents.
Yeah.
And there's this one issue that comes out in the early 80s by Joe Kubert.
I know, I never saw that.
It's Superman and the Demon, and the story goes that he did it as a favor for Julie, and he banged it out over the weekend.
Sure. Maybe Adam can hook me up with some of that, or let me see it. I don't know.
Dude, it is Dennis. Talk to Ron. I've got it right here.
Oh, you do? Oh, let me see. Like, open it up. Let me see something.
It is one of my favorites.
I've never even heard about it.
Oh my God, it is so good.
You know, it's funny you were talking about Travis Charest. I remember the first time I saw his X-Men Wildcats thing, and I was just like, it was almost demoralizing how good it was.
Yep.
It was like, and I remember standing there with Klaus Janson, and we were both looking at the stuff, and then they had it on display at the San Diego Comic Con, and it really changed the game for a lot of people, because it's like, hey, you guys, this is what it could be, you know? And that guy, something clicked in him, because if you look at his early stuff,
oh, I know,
you know, it was very Jim Lee, and, you know, big heads, and his heads were kind of too big, and he was doing the Flash or something, I think, and and then all of a sudden, I didn't see anything, and then I saw that, and I'm like, what was this guy? What did he
make a deal with?
Went to a mountaintop that nobody even heard of, like, you know, just sick.
All right, hold on. I'm going to full screen myself. No offense, but
no, that's all right. I want to see it. Yeah.
So that's the cover.
That's insane.
The splash page is what hooked me right out of the gate.
Look at that. Yeah, see, look at the way he would draw figures and perspective.
But dude, there's this 2-page spread of this party. Now I want to describe this to you, because you'll get a vision in your head if you're like me, and you'll be like, oh, it's going to take me forever to draw. So it's a 2-page spread. The top panel is a long skyline shot of Gotham, and there's a museum. And then it cuts to a splash panel of the inside of a museum in Gotham with a black tie party. and you see like dinosaurs and stuff that are on display, and then there's some inset panels. And I hear that and I go, oh, that's going to take me a week to draw. And then you see what Joe did, and you're like,
Man, that's just,
damn it, that's gorgeous.
yeah, actually, wow, holy cow. You know, he has so much of his influence in my work just looking at it. Like, there's that shot on the right. And I've never even seen this before, but it's man, he's influenced so much of the way I think. I don't mean to make it sound like, oh, I'm comparing myself to Joe Kubert.
Oh, no, dude.
I see the things in there, the principles I learned from him are so strong. The inset panels and the way he composed the camera through those dinosaurs in the foreground, and
Here's
just
another
amazing.
couple good ones with Superman. Just because you never see Joe draw Superman.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's issue, because I know you want it now. So it's issue number 66.
You know, I do want it. I do want it. I'll have to find it. I'll find it on the internet somewhere. Oh,
dude, it's in dollar boxes.
Do the triptych thing again. I like that. That's
All
better.
right.
I like that.
Yeah, this thing's in
I'm
dollar
so
boxes.
distracted by those images behind our pictures, so this is better.
No problem. Yeah, dollar boxes at every con I go to.
Oh, I gotta find that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
All right, Dennis, I've been hogging it. I know you want to talk Berserker.
Well,
we
do. So Andy and I and Ron were before the show. We were talking a little bit because Andy and I backed Berserker way back when we were like, "Oh, this sounds really cool. This is interesting," and we had seen, Matt.
Yeah, you changed your mind about it?
Changed your mind? Yeah, we backed it. So we did it with all three of the volumes. So, we're kind of waiting on number one. And then we do our Wednesday comic show where, we go to the store, get our new comic books, talk about what all the new books we got for the week. Well, we went in there that week and all of a sudden there was Berserker number one sitting on the shelves. We're like, what? We didn't even know they were coming out in floppies.
Yeah, I had no idea.
We're like, whoa.
Yeah, it's been a crazy ride, man. That book sold like insane.
So we picked them up. Then, there's number one. And then, of course, we got the Chromium number two.
Yeah, did you see my cover?
These are the only covers that we had.
Almost $300 it's selling for already.
Wow. Was yours like an super exclusive, I guess?
It was for the second print run of the first issue.
Okay.
It was a foil cover. I don't know if let's see. Let's see if I can find it. Oh God. Here's all the originals, actually. Whoa.
Oh, nice.
Let's see if I can find the cover. Let's see. Where are you? You saw all this stuff, right? Like these pages.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. We'll just go solo for a second. Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, I got to the end of the first issue and it was such a great ending. I was like, yeah, I'm waiting for the hardcover. That is great. Hey, so when you're drawing the lead character, I mean, it has a Keanu feel, but were you kind of directed that way to do that, or not really?
Initially, I here's the cover. Initially, when I talked to Keanu about it, I said to him, like, do you want this to look like you?
Oh, yeah. I remember that one? That's the one I pulled for the graphic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Yeah, that is, yep. Nice.
But, so when I talked to him, and he's like, the idea is that I'm going to play the character, but I told him, I said, well, I don't really want to be looking at photographs because there's something that comes across as inauthentic in a comic when you're using photos to draw people. Mm-hmm. It's almost distracting. And for me, my job is to make the character come to life on its own, So I got the general sense of Keanu's face. He has a very symmetrical face. That's why he's a movie star, He looks good. He looks good on camera. He's got these particular eyes and symmetry. So he's pretty easy to draw. And so I just went from that. I got the general sense of him, and then I just drew the character with what my memory was of what I looked at. But I didn't look over at photos and then, because to me, if you do that, you're going to say, oh, I recognize that photo of Keanu Reeves. You're not going to look at it as the character of BRZRKR. So
it'll take you out of the story.
Yeah. And so I just didn't want to do that. So I'm pretty effective at creating a combo both of this character being able to live on its own, and yet, let's see, there's a particular page, a close-up shot, you'll be able to see what I mean. Where is it? Siphoning through these things, through them. There's a page I just pulled up too. Yeah, here we go. So you look.
Oh yeah.
All right, now that obviously looks like John Wick, sort of, but if you look at it, he kind of has his own identity in a way.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's got the Keanu feel, but in the same token, I tried to make it feel like he was his own guy,
Mm-hmm.
There's a combination of both, and that's my job. We have to be the actors too,
Right.
We're acting this, we're playing these characters. This is what a lot of people don't get about what we do, and I think it's a little bit underappreciated is how much of ourselves we have to put into this to draw them, and
Right.
I'm not taking anything away from the stories. Obviously they're great. However, it really gets taken for granted how much work we have to put in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not crying victimhood about it. It's just
not at all. It's true. I mean, it's that old adage of the writer taking 2 minutes to go. There's a storming horde of Vikings coming over a mountain or whatever. Well, that took them that to write.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's so many things. It's like the body language, am I tilting the hip up this way to make it feel like they're or pulling the shoulders down, enough to make, and is the head tilt just right to make it seem like there's the weight of the world on this person's shoulders? Is it right? Then you have to draw it correctly. Does that rib cage look right? Oh, and how much space goes in between the person in the foreground and that object in the background, and where on the panel should I put it, and where? Yeah, I mean, it just never ends. And the draftsmanship, and that car, and that building, and that sky, and that and that landscape, and that composition, and the way those, all these shapes work to pull your eye into the next one. And then should I put an inset panel in here? Should I show a close up of a hand? Should I show the if a person's knocking, is it this much of their face knocking, or is it just the hand, or is it how much of atmosphere should I put in? Should I it just never ends. And it's like you're responsible for drawing this movie basically, and it's not, you don't have the benefit of a camera crew, a lighting technician, you're all of that. Mm-hmm. All of what you're doing. And, you may get some good comments from the writers in there, but Jesus, man, people don't get it. They don't realize how hard it is. And I tell people, come to me with their books and their stuff, and they want feedback on their work. And I'm always happy to do that, but I have to tell them it's a lot of work, Well,
it's so much mental work, and I don't think that's what a lot of people understand. I remember when I first started doing it before I was married and stuff. Your friends that have regular jobs would be like, "Oh, you seem tired at night and stuff." And it's like physically not really, but mentally I'm just like, whoa.
Exactly.
I don't even. I still collect. I mean, Dennis knows. I still do collect comics. I still read comics. But generally Monday through Friday at night, I'll just veg out and watch TV because I don't have to do anything up here. I don't even want to read comics that I like. I still get stuff on
Wednesdays. People ask me all the time, and I'm like, look, by the end of the day, I'm so shot from drawing things that I have no interest in looking at comics or wanting, I have 4 kids and I have other things. I had a jiu-jitsu school for years, and, and I just want to do other things, I want to go out and use my body a little bit instead of sitting here. My brain is so like, filled with all that stuff. And it's very taxing. And that's again, why I like the Instagram. To backpedal for that a second, is that, before I'd be so taxed, but there was no reward to it as much. Well, you have to do it for yourself, obviously, but you still want feedback. You want people to like what you're doing. I don't give I don't give a who says it. They like the feedback. You like people like pure. You love the art for the art itself. Bull. If you're going to want people to respond to it, and so that's made it, again, as taxed as I am, it's fun to go and see people's reaction to it, I just think that it would be a great documentary to happen, to really show what, because I think people think it just pours out of us. And in a way, it does when you get to, a level like myself or yourself who've been doing it for 30 straight years.
Certain things
become a machine. And I've offered advice to other artists who I know are contemporaries who struggle with getting the work done. And I'm like, look, man, I just go in and I go click and I shut everything off and I go. And I don't think about any of it. I don't overthink what the writer wants. I don't overthink, what I put down. I just do it. I don't think. And I trust every instinct that comes my way. If something doesn't feel right, there's a saying I've always had in my head. It's sort of biblical, I think. I think it's in the Bible even. It says, if thine eye offends thee, pluck it out. And I'm not putting biblical stuff here, but it's always stuck in my head, and I've always applied it to my work. Meaning, if something's bugging me, I get rid of it.
Right.
So I go off that principle. If there's a reason something's tickling you, that what is it? Just say, if I'm working too hard at it, I scrap it and I go forward with something else. And it really takes a long time to give up that fight, or experience to give up the fight in that regard. And understand you're giving something away to get something better in the long run about it. So that's the principle I follow with. I just trust those instincts, and I also know enough to get up and walk away from something I'm struggling with. If I'm struggling with a page, I put it aside and I move to the next one, and that's helped me immensely. That's been a revelation, and I learned it many, many years, decades ago. Is that when I put it aside, if I'm wrestling with it and working too hard, put it aside, go forward. And when I come back to it, what I was struggling with jumps out at me. As far as when I look at it and I go, oh, that's what was wrong with it. Where I couldn't spot it before because I was so close to it. I couldn't figure it out, and then something just jumps out at me. It's kind of like when you look back at your old work from years ago that you hadn't looked at in a long time. You look at your old comic book work and you'll see something. You'll go, oh my God, I can't believe I drew that so badly, because it jumps out at you. And that's
it just hits you.
Train yourself to do that while you're working. You can avoid a lot of that. I mean, we're always getting better, obviously. You're always going to look back and go, ugh, that's something you did. Believe me.
But do you ever
show for me on the internet when I go to comic art fans and I see sketches I did at
oh my God, I don't
oh God,
I do not like so the website Comic Art Fans were
I just mentioned that.
Yeah, right. So I'll go there to search other people. Like I was just there over the weekend looking at Gil Kane just to see what was up and stuff.
Right.
I've learned a long time ago not to punch my name in because I don't want to see it. And I don't sell my originals, but there's con sketches that are up there too. And I'm just like,
exactly.
Why are you putting a con sketch up?
Like, oh God, it's to the point where I want to redo the sketch for the person or buy it back or something because it's so bad. And at the time, because you're moving so fast trying to get the sketches, you got 50 people want to sketch, and so you don't have time to to look at it and be it with a critical eye. You're just doing it, and here you go. And in hindsight, looking and go, how could this person not have walked away and gone, what the hell did I pay for that for? For this piece of garbage, for me. I mean, when I look at it, I'm like,
Right.
oh, it's commercial. But at the time, I might have thought it was pretty good,
And
But
you have to just really try to look at it from their point of view of not knowing what we know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well,
and what
course.
they see,
Yeah.
of course.
Well, there's one in particular that jumps out of my head, and I'll bet you at some point you can go look if you're interested, curious enough. There's a picture of Wonder Woman I did for someone, and she's standing in this pose, in this sort of dynamic pose. But for some reason, I drew her like she was anorexic, like her head's big and her body is so skinny, and I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, why did I, and it's a horror show for me. That person owns it. I'm like, I want to draw it for him.
There was a period in 2011, I think it was. I was doing these children's books with DC characters for HarperCollins, and they were drawn in a simpler style, so it was really fun to do. But at the time, and I've mentioned this before, I take this specific anxiety medication I've been on for like 20 years, right?
Yeah.
But at the time I was drawing this, my doctor was like, hey, let's try something else. And I was like, okay. And he replaced that one medication with this other one. And then I got this weird side effect tingling like in my leg. So he's like, well, here, take this to counteract that. Long story short, I was on like 3 different medications. My mind was not right. Like, I knew it then. And sitting down to draw was so difficult, but I had to get the work done. And I got that book done. And then I finally, I went to the doctor. I said, I want off all this crap. I'm going back on what I was on before. It worked for 10, 15 years. I don't know what I was thinking. And it was a bad 3 months for me. Like, when I went off the stuff, dude, I went off it cold turkey. I had night sweats. It was a beast.
Right,
I couldn't imagine. I can't imagine what like an addict goes through, getting off stuff. But I look back at that job and I'll never forget it because there's so many things in it. I'm just like, why did I do that? Why did I do that? What was it? And
it never,
I could barely sit down to work.
ends. Not to sidestep for a second. I didn't realize.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, all you guys. I just looked over and saw a comment section I didn't know was there. I clicked on it, so I see all these comments people are writing.
Oh, no.
Man. So
That's part of our job. Is supposed to be calling them up too.
Yeah.
realize.
Well, the one that was asking was, do you have any plans for any upcoming creator-owned projects, either through crowdfunding, self-publishing, or an existing publisher, other than Berserker, that you're currently involved in?
Well, I was going to be doing that, but then Berserker came along, so it kind of, when I left Marvel, I didn't want to renew my contract, and because of COVID and everything, I think they're redoing all that anyway. So I don't know whether it would have even been renewed, but I wasn't going to either way. I had been there for 3 decades at that point. I wanted to try something else, and I had done Men of Wrath. But Berserker sort of fell into my lap from the sky like a frigging asteroid. And but my idea was that I would go do a creator-owned of something. I would, I have tons of ideas.
Sure.
But I kind of got so burnt out on superheroes, kind of like that. I was thinking I would do another comic, kind of like Road to Perdition or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's more of a real story, or something that's more, I don't know, that I could maybe shop around to Hollywood to get made into a movie like that or something like. I wasn't sure. I was going to do just commissions for a while and and see what I wanted to do. But I do have plans after this, maybe with Boom, to do something. We've talked about it. After Berserker, so we'll see. I haven't given them my ideas or anything yet.
So how did Berserker fall into your lap?
Well, hold on. I was just saying, and you do know a guy that's in Hollywood. So just saying.
What's
a guy
that?
named Keanu. I said you do know a guy that's in Hollywood now. So
yeah, well, I worked in movies already.
Oh, that's true. I forgot about I Am Legend.
Yeah, that was trippy because I was on set for that one day, and I'm standing there, and it's in this abandoned bank, and they're about to start filming or whatever, and I'm just standing there by myself in the corner on the side of the bank floor, and somebody comes over and kneels right next to me. I mean, literally right here, and I look, and it's Will Smith. And I'm like, oh shit, it's Will Smith in my head. And I'm like kind of uncomfortable because he's like literally right next to me, and he's got a couple of guys behind him or whatever. But it's like he went out of his way to kneel next to me. And I'm like, so I kind of just maneuvered away to the other side of the floor. And I'm like, this is just too weird for me. So I walk to the other side, and the dude's staring at me the whole time. Like I kind of walk, I look, and he's looking up at me and looking up at me. And I'm like, geez. And I remember saying in my inner monologue, I'm like, geez, Will Smith keeps fucking staring at me, you know? And I'm like, I don't know why, but he's
Right.
for some reason he targeted me on set. And maybe
Well, you know what was going through his mind? Will Smith walked up next to you and went, holy crap, that's Ron Garney.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I wonder if he'll sign my X-Men.
But so he gets up. I'm like standing there, and I'm like trying to not make the eye contact that he's making, you know. And I'm like, you know, so he gets up and he walks right to me, like right up to me, and I'm like, he's like, hey man, welcome to the team, and I'm like, hey, thanks, you know. And so I'm like, hey, you know, I'm like, you want to take a picture together? And he kind of looked at me. He was like, sure. So we took a picture together, and I think he was weirded out by that, but I didn't know what else to say. I'm like,
right.
I've never been in that situation before where a giant movie star's following me around a movie set. So, so I texted my wife the picture. I'm like, look who I'm hanging out with there, and you know. And then I brought her, brought her to the rat party,
Nice.
and introduced her to him and Jada Pinkett, and that was interesting from a case study point of watching human behavior, because after I got done talking with him and hanging out with them for a few minutes, we went and sat down, me and my wife, who was very pregnant with my son at the time, and I was watching him, and it was funny to watch him in the middle of it was in this warehouse, this 20,000 square foot warehouse, and they had giant movie screens of the film dailies, and you know, and it's live band doing African music, and it was really something. This rap party was like, wow, you know, like holy cow. And so I was watching him, and it's funny to see how effortlessly he navigates the crowds of people trying to pretend they're not near him, you know, because so he's kind of standing there, you know, and the weird part is once people saw me talking to him and talking each other's ear, we're laughing, having a few laughs. I introduced my wife and Jada Pinkett, whatever, to watch how they're responding to me, and they're all looking over, and they start looking at me when I walk by, you know, because everybody wants to be a part of those people's worlds so badly. So he's standing there, and I just see crowds of people, and they kept getting closer to him to the point where he's standing there, and they're all around him in a circle, just pretending they're just trying to act like they're talking amongst themselves, but they're trying to get close to him. So it's weird. It's a weird magnetic attraction these people have, these movie stars, to, you know, that they have with people. It's like, you know, they just get sucked, you know, they suck people in, or the people suck themselves, and they're like, you know, maybe like remoras or something, if I were to use a bad term to describe it. But it's interesting, the magnetism those people have. So anyway, back to the original question. Yeah, right. I actually did give Will Smith a comic for his son.
Oh, that's cool.
I happen to have one. I said, hey, here, let me sign this for, the little boy there. He's not a little boy anymore, but
yeah,
his son. So what's his son's name?
I know. I can't remember. I was trying to think of that too. I don't.
Jaden
Smith. I think.
Yeah. So I signed it to him. He's like, thanks, and he gave it to one of his guys. I don't know if the kid ever saw it, but you know, at least I try to give his, you know.
Yeah, that's cool.
Anyway, so the keanu thing happened was I was wrapping up Juggernaut, and I knew I wasn't coming back to Marvel, and I was going to make all these plans to do whatever. or I'd just take my time, decide what I wanted to do. And I was really burnt out anyway. I've been doing it for, over 3 decades. And so I got an email from this guy, Philip, I think it was, at Boom. And he's like, hey, hey, Ron, I'm just wondering what your availability is. And can we talk? And I'm like, well, I was like, well, my contract's up with Marvel. I really wasn't planning on doing anything, but sure, we can talk. So can we give you a call? So they called me, and they're like, so listen, we're doing this book with Keanu Reeves. And I'm like, oh, like Keanu Reeves, the movie star. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, how many Keanu Reeves are there, Yeah,
no doubt.
And they said, and listen, he really loves your work. And that's where I was like, what? I'm like, yeah, okay. So I thought they were just sort of trying to not bait and switch. I don't mean to make it sound insidious. I just mean that it would be a flattering thing to say to an artist to get them on a book, and maybe
Right.
he did like it or whatever. But, it was like, well, I didn't hear that from him, kind of bluffing them in a way to make it, just because I thought maybe Keanu it was just his name was on it or something, like a branding thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So they said, well, listen, can you at least do a Zoom meeting with us? And, we could talk more about it. I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? I was planning on saying no, honestly, because I just wasn't, I was like, I don't know if I want to get into another thing. I just jumped out of this relationship with Marvel,
Sure.
into another big commitment, this and that. So, so that Wednesday I had my Zoom meeting scheduled. So I'm like, I sit down right here and I click the button and bing, there's Keanu Reeves staring at me. I'm like, hey. He's like, run. Like, and we started talking.
That was great.
And there was the other guys from Boom, kind of like this setup and whatever. And
Yeah.
so it was really like just, that's what I mean. It was like an asteroid hit. And it's like all of a sudden Keanu Reeves is in my life, like, but the day before, a few days earlier, you're just thinking, what am I going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do. Next thing you know, you're in it with this Neo and, all these, because he's so responsible for all these mythological characters that we have an affinity for, like I don't know how many times I've joked around with my buddy Howard about, Devil's Advocate and, and Free Will, right? And all these lines he's done and, just all these movies, not just that, but Point Break, just everything he's done.
Everything, yeah. Yep.
I mean, and such an icon, whatever. And there he is looking at me saying, yeah, I've been on a Ron Garney bender, reading all your stuff. And I'm like, why? Like, what? How is this happening? Like, it was really trippy. I'm like, it took me a while to get used to that.
Yeah, I bet.
Like, and I get off, I'm like, am I living in some alternate universe here? Like, what is going on? Like, only because of how much I've joked about his work, not joked, but talked about him in my life, in my comic book life, and just movies I've watched. I've watched his movies while I'm working and, whatever. So there he is. And it's just very strange. It was kind of serendipitous too, because my jiu-jitsu experience, I competed against a guy who I became very good friends with. The guy's a world champ, but so he beat me, I hate to admit. Gay, you're out there, someday I want a rematch. But so we became friends though. I'm very, pretty close, brothers with him, and he happens to own the security guard agency who hires out for John Wick, like in New York. So he knows Keanu. And so he texted Keanu and he texted me and said, hey, tell Kiki I said hi. And then I told Keanu that. And he's like, yeah, Gay told me that he knows you. And, and so it was just really weird. And then it turns out that this guy who I initially started my gi journey with in jiu-jitsu, this guy Renato Migliaccio, he trains a lot of, he doesn't know Keanu, but he's taken a picture with Keanu at a rap party once that he was invited to, but he trains Keanu's stuntmen judo and stuff. This guy Renato. so there was that connection, and the same gym Keanu was training for John Wick at, so it's just really interesting, how the worlds collided and we have this stuff in common. So yeah, it's been great. I'm actually, I've got, it's past all that. Now it's, Keanu, and, we've worked together and we've done interviews together, and we Skyped to each other on occasions, and, and talk here and there. So it's pretty cool. It's been a real, I can't say anything other than it's been a great blessing, I guess,
Sure.
to happen in my life. And it's just added a layer to my career that's made it, cemented it in my mind as something very, having made me feel grateful for having experienced it. I've always been grateful that I've had my career, but this really added a dimension to it that made me even more grateful, because it's just has fulfilled it in a way that I couldn't have expected. So it's not just because of him, but because of Boom and the way they've been great. All the guys at Boom, and working with Bill Crabtree, and working with the editor, Eric Harbour, and they've all been beautiful people to me. They've treated me very well, and the whole experience, and the character. I mean, it's a cool as hell character, it's like, it's right in my wheelhouse, and I mean, it's the kind of rough, tough, sort of gritty sort of thing I'm pretty good at, I guess. Action oriented. I'm more of an action oriented guy, maybe, I guess. I mean, I think
the cool thing about it is, it's not like, you know how it is when you work for Marvel or DC on established characters. They already have a look, so you're coming on going, oh man, Jack Kirby drew Captain America, John Romita drew Captain America, Mike Zeck drew Captain America. You know what I mean? Berserker, this is Ron Garney. This is Berserker. So anybody else drawing Berserker, I mean, there's some great variant cover artists on the book, but still, you're doing the bulk of it. So that is what people envision when they think Berserker comic. They think your work.
Yeah, well, that's nice. I just, in the beginning, there was a lot of John Romita Jr. comparisons and Frank Miller comparisons, and obviously those are great guys to be compared to.
Sure.
And again, all that stuff comes out in my excitement when I'm doing the work. So I'm not trying to be anybody but myself.
Right.
But like anything, you can look at any artist and you'll see their influences come out in certain spots,
Oh yeah.
JR, even though he's a contemporary, I still was always a huge fan of his work, so maybe there's that in there, but I also have the same influences he does, like his own father and Gil Kane and Jack Kirby. So, and Buscema. So I have the same influences as John. So that's going to come through, and I can see where they see it in certain compositions maybe that I've done that look like JR, and because I have been a big fan of his stuff, and I've certainly attempted to do things like learn from his work. I'm flattered that people see it, and but I'm not trying to do it on purpose, is what I'm trying to say. So
Yeah.
Joe
was asking if you're going to be working on the storyboards for the Netflix stuff.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to be doing. I'm fairly certain I'm going to get involved in the movie somehow, but I'm not sure in what capacity yet.
Okay.
But, I'm pretty sure. I'm hoping. I've talked with Boom about it. I've talked with the guy from the Boom film production who's the head of all that. A little bit about it, touched upon it, and so I'm sure there'll be room. I probably won't be involved in the anime series, because they're going to make an animated series out of it that's going to be with the anime, and so I probably won't be involved in that because I know Keanu is interested in seeing other art styles with the character, and I get that,
cool.
I get that, but I definitely want to be involved in the live action. And hopefully we'll see where that goes. I even mentioned maybe assistant directing, so I could learn some of that technical aspect of it, because of my experience of storytelling, and I'm more of a storyteller director than anything, I think, than a style monster. For me, I just have a very cinematic mind, I think, and I think that comes through in the work, I hope. And
Well, they could also just, for really important action scenes, come to you and be like, "How would you block this?"
Yeah, I mean, I'm
stuff like that.
I'm not as in. I'll be perfectly honest. I don't know if I'm interested in doing storyboards. I want to get more into the behind the camera kind of thing, and
That's cool.
be able to look and see and but I get it. It's doing the same thing, but I've done the whole comic for that.
Right. No, I hear you. Yeah.
I mean, but I don't think, like Keanu even said in one of our last interviews together, he mentioned to the interviewer that he doesn't think that the script is going to be exactly like the comic. It'll be something else, but it'll have elements of it in it. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm not. Things change, and I'm trying not to look too forward on it and have expectations on what that might be. You never know. Things change a lot very quickly. So we'll see.
I tell you, one of the things with Gano that his intensity for a role, I'm sure you've seen the YouTube videos of him going around a gun range.
Yeah.
Good Lord, man.
He's very committed to his training, and last time I Skyped with him, he was in his hotel room and clicked the button, and there he is. And he was just exhausted from training he's in Berlin training, and he's doing all the judo and martial arts training. And he's just like, I'm like, dude, again, he's all scruffy. I'm like, what's up, scruffy? And he's like, I'm like, you look exhausted. He's like, Ron, I'm so tired. And then he starts showing me the stuff he's working on, the judo moves, and he's acting it out in his hotel room. I'm like, dude, I won't keep you. Let's just, I know you're tired, so let's just short. But he's very committed. He's a very gifted guy. I think he's better at things than he realizes. Like, he's really hooked into this thing where he gives a lot with very little with his face. Like, he's able to convey things. Like, he's not an actor like
Jim Carrey, really over the top expression stuff.
Who's that actor who did My Left Foot or whatever? Daniel Day-Lewis. He's not that kind of guy. He's like Clint Eastwood. Like, Clint Eastwood could do things with just a little emotion, with just a quiver of his lip. Would convey a lot. And I think Keanu's hooked into that, and I don't think he realizes it. Just sometimes the way he looks and stuff. And the one thing he does really well is that he makes you forget. Like, any movie I've watched, we know it's Keanu Reeves, but he has this weird ability to make you forget he's Keanu Reeves without saying anything.
Do you think it's because of the look? From movie to movie, he tries to vary the look more?
I think he's just got that face that make people project onto.
Yeah.
Something, I think it's a very simplified face, and I think he does very little with it, that is very subtle cues with it. And he's better than he realizes, because I got into this with him a little bit about him and Tom Hanks. And, I said, he could have done that role, Castaway. And he's like, no way. I'm like, yes, you could have, because he conveys so much without saying a whole lot. I think he cut himself some slack a little bit.
Yeah.
I think he's secretly critical of his own abilities. So anyway.
Yeah.
Is he a comic book fan? Is that how he knew about you? Is he like Nicolas Cage?
Yeah, well, he knew my work, but he didn't connect the name with the work until he saw the work, and he goes, oh, it's him. Like, it's Ron Garney. That's the guy who did that. And so he's a comic book fan, but he's not a religious comic book fan, I don't think. Like, he's not like a,
he's not an Uber
who can tell you, where Wonder Woman lost a hangnail in an issue back. So some of these writers are like, they're just cornucopias of knowledge of this stuff that I don't even. It's mind-boggling. But he's not like that. But he's definitely been a fan. He read a lot, and he's a fan of the art. So he knew of my work. He just didn't connect the name with it, but he had seen it, and like a lot of us do.
Yeah.
So, but now he knows. So
Do you think this goes back to actually your training with jiu-jitsu and stuff? I'm trying to think of the right way to word the question. So when he trains,
hey, Michael, who's a suck up?
oh, he's probably talking about me because I was like, oh, did you see the video? Because
Talking
Michael's,
about
No,
me?
it was this. Joe said, "Can I come visit you on the set of the movie?"
oh, he was talking
Yeah,
about
but
Joe.
Michael Paterzo said suck up. Who you calling a suck up?
He was calling Joe Sweeney the suck up because he said he wanted to come
Oh,
visit you
I
on
thought he
the
was
movie set.
I was gonna say I thought he was talking about me because I was saying nice things about Keanu.
No.
But yeah,
No, Michael wouldn't do that.
I like how you guys have these personal relationships with these guys out here.
Well, these two guys we actually know. They live in town, and we see them
Oh,
at
I see.
conventions and stuff.
And I think they're going to be at the Spartan. Well, Joe's setting up at the Spartanburg convention, and hopefully Michael's not working, and he's going to show up.
Yeah. So the training that he does, or any actor does, fighting for a movie,
Yeah.
is it the same type of training that you would teach? Or do you think it's just more, this is movie stuff? So
no,
look,
well,
don't go
yeah.
out and get into a
No,
fight.
for sure. You have to teach the correct move. So he knows the moves. It's just the difference is I actually spoke with him about this because I said we should train and but he can't, one, because he's getting older and so am I. I mean, I'm 58 years old and it's
Right.
difficult for me, my joints. I have a titanium shoulder, like I
Sure.
said. I've had 2 knee operations, 3 pinched nerves. I have a stent in my heart. I mean,
Jesus, you think you're a professional wrestler. Come on.
yeah, I've been through the metal.
Good Lord. Again, you tell somebody that and it's like, don't you draw comic books for a living?
But I've beaten myself up. I mean,
I know.
I've had bottles cracked over my head, dude.
Dude, I've heard the stories.
You have? Okay. Well, there you go. I mean,
I've heard some stories with you and Pinoja, and I'm trying to remember who else going down to Mexico over the bridge.
Yeah, that was a nutty thing. That was an interesting story. Yeah. There was a lot of tequila that night.
Yeah.
But
anyhow, back to the fight. Back to the you were talking to him about it. I'm really curious what you were talking about.
Well, we talked about training. He goes, Ron. He goes, he won't do it, and I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. And I'm like, look, dude, I'm a 1st degree black belt. I'm not gonna. I know the reason I am is because I know how to not hurt you too. It's
right.
I can hurt you, but I don't also know how not to and train so you don't get hurt. But he's like, he goes, no, I can't. He goes, I'm, there's a difference with what I've learned. He said, because what I've learned is for the movies and there's a predetermined outcome to the training, so he learns the moves, but he's learning choreography, the moves inside a choreographed scene. So he learns moves, but he's not doing it like live and for real. So it's different for him. And I get that, and plus he's had injuries. He's got neck problems and, he's not going to be able to be doing some of the stuff he's doing forever. And he needs to, be careful, I'm sure he's insured even, there's got to be insurance.
Oh yeah. I imagine so.
Crazy. So
what's he? He's between us, right? He's not 58, is he? Is he below? He's only what?
57. He's a year younger than I am.
A year younger. Okay, so he's between us. So yeah.
Wow.
Well, how old are you?
Well, I mean, between us, there's a bigger gap. I'll be 52 this year. I didn't mean like I was 56 or anything.
And how about you, Dennis? How old are you?
Oh, I am exactly a month and a half younger than Andy.
And you're gonna let him know that for the rest of his life.
Always.
And both our wives are a year older than us.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, they were both born in 68.
I
probably shouldn't have said that, but
my wife is 16 years younger than me.
Dude, wow. I was watching. Congratulations.
Well, yes. However, she's only my eldest daughter now is only 3 years younger than my wife was when I met her.
Oh, wow.
So that's a little weird, but
no, dude, here's weird. So last night, A&E on Sunday nights for the past few weeks have been doing these 2-hour biographies on wrestlers. And I love all that behind the scenes stuff. So last night was about Bret Hart. Bret Hart is 63 His
wow.
his wife is 38.
Really?
So his wife is the age of a couple of his kids. So how weird is that?
Yeah,
Wow.
that's always a little strange. I don't know, you know. At least the kids are older though, so it's a little different. It's when they're young that
Right.
it's if he had kids who were young and he brought in a woman who was so much younger that maybe not. I don't know.
Well, I mean, he's been with her since she was 28. They've been together for I think 10 years. So
Well,
it's still kind of weird going, hey, meet my
more power to
fiance.
him, you know. It's
Oh yeah.
the way it goes.
That's lots of energy. Well, that at least explains your
My
titanium shoulder.
was in her 30s. She still looks great. So,
How old's your youngest now?
6?
If you don't, 6?
I
I don't know how you do it. I got
don't
one, dude. I got one 18-year-old, and that's it. And I'm
yeah.
just so.
I don't know either. It's one of those things where I shut my brain off. I think I just sit here and go, how did this happen? Like,
So then, how old is your oldest?
21.
Oh, okay.
I have 21, 13. My middle daughter just turned 12 and 6.
So is your 21-year-old still? Did she go to college or what?
She's in college. She lives here. She was at living on campus until COVID.
Yeah.
And then she moved home, and now she's going to college. She was going to college in Rhode Island, but now she's going here in Connecticut, so she just does it from home now.
Yeah.
You know. So, and I also, you know, a lot of colleges now, you got to be careful because they're really ripping kids off. They're really screwing with their lives.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Dude, yeah.
oh, there needs to be a huge revamping because a lot of the wrong people are in the colleges now. They're more activists than there are people who are really trying to teach.
Dude, I'm just glad my kid graduated high school with the stuff going on in high school.
It's ridiculous. Honestly, it's just insanity. I don't care, man, anymore. I'm just so sick of it.
No, I'm right there.
You know, we're put on the earth to serve the whims of activists everywhere who want to put their freaking, you know, their ideas in the heads of young people so they can control the world. You know, it's really sickening to me. It's like you're there to teach them, not to indoctrinate them, period.
Right. Yep.
So I will not let my kids get sucked into that. And, you know, and I have made them all very aware of what has been going on in our culture and the lunacy that's happening because that's what it is. And I don't care.
No, I've done that with my daughter as well. I mean, and there's, you know, you get some pushback. Or at least,
Especially,
my wife and I will get some pushback, and we'll be like, "But you really don't know what you're talking about." And then, you know, she just goes off on this stuff, and we're just like, "You just need to sit down and just listen."
What pushback from who? What do you
mean? She'll push back from us. You know, it's not as bad this past year. Well, this past year she was homeschooled. Well, not home, but Zoom.
Yeah.
But before that, she'd come home and, you know, some event that would happen in the world and, well, talk bad about like police and stuff. Okay. And, you know, it's the first thing that came to mind. And you just have to go, look, there's that
because
one.
They're being fed misinformation.
Right,
and then
they're being fed misinformation.
The other side turns around and says that the other side is feeding misinformation. But there's a way you can tell which is real information, which isn't, which is going on good sources, not from sources of people who are activists. And, you know, the police situation is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. My brother-in-law is a police officer, and I made a comment on Facebook about it because I find it offensive that people were saying the things they're saying. And I've known police officers my whole life, and, you know, upon the millions upon millions upon millions of good arrests, I mean, you're going to focus on some of the bad ones. There's bad things that happen every day, and there are bad people that happen every day. And to try to use these things as opportunities to revamp the entire thing so you can get something out of it that you think is going to benefit a large group of people or persons who don't believe in certain law and order principles, then look, that's not the way we need to be going here.
Right.
Because you're destroying people's lives in the process. And the real telling thing is seeing how much they care about that. Do you really care about how you're destroying people's lives with this anti-police rhetoric you've got going around, and because it's run people out of their jobs and from defending the public, that people are losing their businesses, and don't even get me started. We could go all night on this.
Oh no, I know the three of us could.
It's
for sure.
such, the hard part is for me is the moral superiority through the ignorance of the moral superiority over the police and things like that. It's just unbelievable. Yeah. So
yeah, my cousin's actually.
I don't give a crap what you think, because that's it.
You say my cousin's a police officer up in the Twin Cities, and I'll tell you, with all this crap that's going on, I'm always worrying about something's going to happen, man. He puts his life on the line every single day, and the crap that he has to hear and go through from the people now is it's stunning. There's a reason why so many police are retiring nationwide.
So the thing is like people don't realize that they're these are like then there'll be accusations you're a racist or whatever, but you don't realize that the behavior that they're exhibiting by making these broad strokes of the entire police department and every person who's in it because they wear the blue.
Yep.
That in itself is the same kind of behavior that you're accusing people of racism over.
Right.
You're making broad strokes,
right, it's just
sweeping generalizations of an entire group of people because they happen to be police officers.
Mm-hmm.
There are bad people everywhere, and the majority of them are great people. Yep. And there's middle ground people. The trick is how do we weed them out and make sure that we are on top of and have focus on the ones who can do damage. And period. Yep. The solution to that is not destroying everybody else's life in the process. What the hell's the matter with you people? What kind of
it's like, look, if there's one bad brick in a house, you don't tear down the whole house.
These people, they know that. There's no way that these activists don't know that. But they're looking for opportunity. They're seeing an opportunity because there's a weak crack in there. And they're going to try to hammer a spike through it so the whole thing falls apart. And they can find a way to, for whatever reason, try to find a way to make it benefit their lives, the destruction of this thing. Right. But you can't do that, because when you crack and that whole thing falls apart, well, you're taking down all of these people who are close to you in your own communities, and these people who are trying to run businesses, and and you think that's the answer to it because you have some sense of entitlement that the world should engage the way you see fit, and so you're going to destroy this because you saw a crack in the people need to be stronger. People need to be stronger and start using their voice and stop putting up with this nonsense and saying, too bad. Don't like it? Too bad. Tough. Yeah. You don't like it? We're not listening to your accusations. I'm not going to let you hit me over the head with a verbal hammer of, where, people need to stop shrinking away from, these accusations and just say, too bad. You don't like it? Tough.
Right.
What are you going to do? You can't allow this stuff to keep going on, and I keep out of it for the most part, but I tell my children what's really going on so they can see, because something happened with my own son at school recently, which I won't get into.
Sure.
But he knows what's going on. So I show him and he understands what's really happening. You gotta tell your kids when they're young, so they don't get tricked into believing the world is this way. When it's not that way. It's this way. This is reality. That's some funhouse mirror utopia you want it to be,
Right.
Yep. You're not going to get to that utopia through that funhouse mirror. It's just some perverted, warped freaking thing that's being created, because you're going against, the truth about a lot of things. So anyway, enough of that. So
yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Well, look, we've been going for 2 hours as it is. It is after 9, so we can.
Indie Comics Jones, because Fox News and QAnon are so much better. Give me a break, dude. Call social media when somebody breaks into your house. Call social media when somebody breaks into your house. How will that go? They get their news from CNN. Ron is great. Please come back to the show. Ron is all about the love. Yes. This.
Right there.
Friend Rich McKeegan. This is.
Yeah, what is that? That looks like a specialty shirt.
Black Belts for Butterflies. It's this guy Rich McKeegan. It's a charity he runs.
Oh,
it was,
nice.
Based on what happened at Sandy Hook. So it's for Dylan, this kid Dylan, who was a sad casualty. This little boy. It was probably the worst day in American history, in my opinion, aside from 9/11. It's so tragic and heartbreaking. And Rich runs a great charity, so look it up, Black Belt for Butterflies. If you can contribute to it, great, or whatever.
Is that the website?
Yeah, I mean, you can just type it in Google. You'll find information on it. So,
I was going to say, because I didn't know.
Autism aware. Dylan had autism. For autism awareness, he was unfortunately a casualty of Sandy Hook. It's a tragic story, but this is a charity in his honor. So.
Oh no, that's very cool. I was going to say we can always link it.
It's a jiu-jitsu community thing where he does seminars with jiu-jitsu black belts from all over, real luminaries. Marcelo Garcia's even done one, I believe. And he donates all the money he gets for these seminars, donates it to this charity. So this cause. So for autism.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. My daughter's on the spectrum, so that's nice.
Oh, is that right? Oh,
yeah.
There you go.
I just threw a link for it up in the comment section.
Oh, awesome! Very cool. Very
cool. I was actually going to ask too, because usually I try to link in the description for a website or something. You don't have a website, do you?
No, because there's so much social media. You don't need.
What about it?
Just
you want to shout out your Instagram? What's your Instagram?
Ron Garney Art.
Just okay. All right. Yeah, we'll link that in the description of the video.
Facebook, I put stuff. It links to Facebook, but I keep a lot of my family stuff off that. But my wife does the family stuff. But I have a Ron Garney fan art page on there, which I am horrible at, paying as much attention to. But no
problem. We can link. We can do the Instagram and stuff.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool, man.
Well, look, I appreciate it, buddy. Thank you, Michael, Joseph, Indie Comics Jones.
Thanks everybody for
Dennis and Andy Show, aka DNA.
we had a lot of people we had a good turnout today. A lot of vocal people.
Go in a weird direction with that. Andy and Dennis's DNA.
It's a DNA show.
The DNA show.
It is.
Yeah,
DNA.
Yeah, and by the way, this is Michael. By the way, wearing my Dennis and Andy shirt while watching the Dennis and Andy show. So we've got it in the link below, but you can get your own Dennis and Andy shirt. And Michael went and bought his.
That's right. One sale.
You can pay your mortgage for that. So.
Yeah, right. I sold that $1 million. Real quick, we'll end on this. Did either of you guys see? I meant to bring this up to you, Dennis, so we could talk about it on one of our other shows. I cannot believe somebody paid, are you ready, $18,000 on an auction for an invisible statue. So what they got was a certificate certifying that this is an invisible statue.
What?
This is a true story.
I did not see that.
There's a big display case, and then inside the display case was like this tape outline, I think, and there's a certificate saying it's an invisible statue, a notarized certified certificate, and it went up for auction, and somebody paid $18,000 for it.
Did they know they were getting nothing?
They knew they were getting that piece of paper. Yeah.
I don't even know what to say.
It's like that guy who did who bought the Banksy thing.
Oh yeah, was that
and then it went through a paper shredder?
Yes, yeah. Yeah. Well, did you?
Wow.
Well, there's also the one, and
You
this
gotta
was a
have money
total.
to burn to be able to do that, I guess.
There's another one where a guy took a banana and just duct taped it to a wall, and somebody bought that. And you're like,
Amazing.
well, the banana's going to rot, and then what? And they were like, well, then you
There's
just
so
peel
many
the duct tape back.
I know. I'm sure this is a family show, but there's so many directions I could go.
Oh, I know. Oh, I don't care what you say. I was going to say the whole time you were censoring yourself. You don't have to. I don't give a fuck. See? I
know, but your daughter might watch this, or my
She
kids
won't.
might watch it.
Your kids won't.
My kids watch YouTube and they see me on there, and so I just don't want.
I hear you.
You know.
I hear it. My kid's 18, so she can roll with it.
Wow.
Yeah, and she's well, sounds like you're having some struggles there with the belief systems.
Yeah, we got to work on that part of her. But she's not going to a typical university. She's going to Full Sail University that's in Orlando. It's a school for broadcasting, things like that. She wants to go into sports broadcasting. So.
Wow. Okay. So she'll get to go do the NFL games and things like that.
She would love that. She's a big football fan. She's
that's a great gig if she can get it.
She's going to get Andy and I sideline
hopefully
tickets.
They'll go back to the way they used to be.
She's a Bucks fan, and she was a Bucks fan before Tom Brady because she was born in Tampa. So she's a Bucks fan.
You don't like Tom Brady?
No, I like Tom Brady, but I'm just saying she's not a bandwagon like, oh, now I'm a Bucks fan. She's been a Bucks fan for like 5 or 6 years.
Tom Brady,
and she's a Clemson fan. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's
They're
it.
tricked to donate and can't get the donate page. I don't know. I haven't talked to Rich in a while about it, but I'm going to mention this to him and see.
Yeah, so maybe check the website in a few days or something.
Yeah, I'll see what he says. So.
All right, everyone.
Fellas.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
And everybody, please hit the like and subscribe button. We'll be back Wednesday night at 5 or Wednesday afternoon at 5 for the usual comic book show. And until then, thanks, guys, and we will see you later.
Later on.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Bye.